Coach Kitchens, you've been a lot of places. Why North Carolina and why now?
Well, why now is I decided last year to come back to college football just because that's the ground roots of everything that I've always believed in coaching. I came back initially to gain more knowledge in the RPO and the run advantage throw game, and then I really enjoyed myself last year. And I came to North Carolina because one, I think the world of Coach Brown. He's highly respected in this industry and in this business. And what's there not to love about North Carolina? North Carolina is one of the best jobs in the country, and I feel very fortunate to be here.
Freddie, Max said that you called him about the position instead of the other way around. What was that whole process like? Because with Lily leaving right before spring practice, they were kind of a scramble.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I tell Coach Brown the story. I was at the University of North Texas, and he was at Texas, and I called him, and I don't know if you guys, you call people all the time in this business, and when you're at a place like North Texas, you don't always get phone calls back. And there was two guys that stood out to me that called me back, not to offer me a job or not to even say that they had their job still open at the time, but it was Lavelle Edwards at BYU and Mac Brown at the University of Texas, and I always thought the world of him from that standpoint. A guy that I played with, Gene Stallings, and Coach Brown are good friends, and I think he was a mentor of Coach Brown's. We have a lot of the same beliefs in how we approach things, how we deal with the players, how we deal with other coaches, and things like that. So I thought it was a good fit, and I was fortunate enough that he had a job become available.
Max said that you have a history with Chip Lindsey. You've known him for a long time. You guys grew up in a similar area, and he said he spent some time with you when you were in Cleveland. What do you know about the offense? How familiar are you with this kind of offense, and what kind of timetable will you have to be fully immersed in it?
I think to answer your last question first, I think that's an ongoing learning curve for me, which is fine. But when you start talking about offensive football, it's all a base. It's all just how you structure it and how you call things and terminologies and things like that. I've done some of the same things that we're doing here. So it's semantics as far as putting Chip's terminology into my brain and learning it that way. So my familiarity with Chip would be, I've known Chip since high school. I think we met at a football camp at the University of Alabama, and I was maybe in the 9th grade, and he was in the 10th grade, or 10th and 11th grade, or something like that, and we became friends. Chip was from Bob Jones, which is just outside of Huntsville. I was from Gadsden, or I actually went to school in Atala, and Chip would even come down on the weekend sometimes just to hang out because we developed a friendship at the University of Alabama's football camp. And then we played them a couple times and won in high school, in the playoffs usually. And then at the University of Alabama, Chip came to school there, I think after his freshman or sophomore year, and we met there and we hung out some at the University of Alabama. And then we just stayed in touch along the way. And Chip got into coaching after college, and of course I got into coaching after college, and we've never had the opportunity to work together. And this is the first time, but at different stops along the way, Chip would always come out and visit, bring his staff or bring the offensive staff if he was the coordinator of the spot. And he did that in Arizona, and then he brought his whole staff, I believe, when I got the job in Cleveland.
Did you talk with him before you reached out to Mac when this position opened?
I definitely did. I actually talked to him right after that. We jumped on the Zoom all together, and we needed to make sure the fit was right. Me with them and them with me. So, I've been real fortunate in that area.
When you wanted to go back to college football, did you take the analyst job because it was a big Power 5 program, and that was an easier way for you to get back on the coaching staff?
I took the job in South Carolina because I trust Shane Beamer, and I'm friends with Shane Beamer. I was familiar with some guys on their staff that I trusted, and it was a good opportunity to come in and have initially back into college football, come in and have an overarching look from afar per se of how things, because the landscape of college football now is totally different than it was when I was last in college football in 2005. So I needed kind of a macro version of it per se whenever I first came back to college football to benefit me from being there, but also benefit whatever program I was more so to be there.
What are the biggest changes since you left?
I think we're in some of the biggest changes right now as we speak. We're able to still work with the players right now and be outside of spring football. So we're still legally able to get with the players. Of course, the time's limited. A lot like in the NFL during starting in about a month, they will have the players some, and it won't be considered organized team activities or training camp or OTAs or mini camp or whatever. It's going more toward that direction. It seems to be, and that's what I saw in South Carolina, and certainly I see here. Everybody in the country's doing.
Freddie, along those lines, this was I asked is sort of what's your philosophy of coaching players, and how does that differ from the NFL game to the college game that you've now gotten back into? How do you see that aspect?
I don't think that changes at all. I think ultimately you're a coach. They call you coach for a reason, and that's another version of a teacher, okay? And maybe this answers your question. And I told Coach Brown this the other day, and I don't know if he thought I was joking or what, but I'm being dead serious. My first training camp with the Dallas Cowboys in Oxnard, California, I went out. Jason Witten wasn't practicing that day. Anthony Fasano, we drafted in the second round. He hurt his knee, so I'm sitting there with two undrafted free agents and another kid that they'd had on the team already that they were kind of still evaluating. And they had so many mental errors that day that I lost count, okay? And I come in the staff room, and Mike Zimmer's sitting across from me. I'm sitting on this side of the table. He's sitting on that side of the table, and we're in there early. I'm fired up. It's my first training camp. Coach Parcells comes in. He sits down at the end of the table, and I can tell that somebody's looking at me. And Zimmer's across the table there smiling, and I was like, why is he smiling? Just thinking to myself. And then I figured it out, because I feel Coach Parcells just staring at me. And I look at him and say, how you doing, Coach? And he's like, you know what? They're going to get you fired. All right? And it was a shock to me. And then he said, if you can't teach them what to do, why do I need you? Okay, so that's the core of everything we do in coaching, whether it's in the National Football League, you're at a junior high school, a college, it doesn't matter. So at the end of the day, first and foremost, as a coach, you're a teacher. And that aspect of it won't change, no matter what level you're on.
So Parcells is kind of always up there.
Well, Coach Parcells I like to think of certain coaches were kind of a foundation of where I got my start, but also my beliefs and thinking and thought processes along the way is the core and foundation of who I am and what I am as a coach. And he's definitely had an impact on that.
Well, Nick Saban worked with him for 1 year, right?
I was there for about 16 months. I was there for, I can tell you stories about like how, I ended up leaving and all that kind of stuff, he kind of made me take the job because it was a good job at the time, but I really wanted to stay another year at LSU, but he thought I needed to get my career going. I was just a graduate assistant there, and he taught me a lot about, it was a good time with Coach Saban there. That was a good guy to have as one of your first coaches. That wasn't my first job. My first job was at Glenville State College, which nobody knows where Glenville is. It's right in the middle of the state of West Virginia. I still remember it's exit 79 off of Interstate 79 going from Charleston to Morgantown. And then you hang a left. If you're going north, you hang a left for 15 miles and you watch your taillights the whole way. So with Rick Trickett, he had a big impact on my career. Different people have, you carry along the way, everybody you come across with, you should carry something that you've learned from them along the way, whether it be an assistant coach, a player, or a head coach. And with Rick Trickett, you know, I carried my foundation of teaching technique and things like that came from Coach Trickett. And he had a big impact on my career. And then I was fortunate enough to GA for Coach Saban. And your everyday approach, the process of getting things started and doing the same things every day, not matter what the scoreboard, reads, doesn't dictate on how hard I play and how I perform. That's what I took from him, and trying to carry that over throughout my career.
You haven't recruited since like 2005, I guess, when you were at Mississippi State. I mean, obviously it's changed massively since then. Your thoughts on like getting back into the recruiting game, your philosophy, obviously kind of a learning curve there.
Well, I think first and foremost, I think when you start talking about recruiting, you start talking about relationships, all right? And this is a people business, and I guarantee you guys can relate to this, just like your wives, your girlfriends, anybody that's in any type of career. Ultimately, it's all going to come back to a relationship you have with somebody, or your business relationships, or your personal relationships on what I feel about this guy, what kind of feeling does this guy give me, of all those sorts of things. So that's first and foremost. I feel like I'm a very personable person from that standpoint. I like to get to know people. I like to get to know different types of people and different styles of people. So I think that's where it starts. And then you just got to be willing to put the work in. And I think I can do that. So I feel like I'm excited about recruiting. So.
When you took this job, what did Shane say, knowing that your first game with UNC would be against South Carolina?
Well, I didn't realize that we were playing them first. At least that's what I said. But anyways, Shane's great. Shane's a good friend of mine. Our families are good friends. My daughters and his daughters talk all the time. My wife and his wife's probably best friends. And Shane and I are good friends. We used to vacation together. All those sort of things. So he wants nothing but the best for me, and as I do, except for that first game.
Freddie, what is it about the NFL where a team hires a coach, obviously because they need a new coach, things aren't going well, and then coaches get fired after 1 year? I mean, it doesn't seem like there's any measurements to have that happen. What's that all about?
Yeah, I think just, I don't know, I probably need to stay away from that question a little bit. But I think generally speaking, it differs like organization, but some organizations, anything could happen, and you have to upset one person, and that could injure stay there per se. So we have boosters that sometimes wield a lot of influence in certain schools. Yeah.
Who are the influences in the NFL that can?
Well, I think it's ultimately it all starts one place. It starts with the ownership.
Right.
And the ownership owns the team. So the ownership is in correlation to things. The ownership is your boosters. And
in general, what do the owners know about football in your experience?
Say that again.
In general, how much do the owners know about football in your experience?
Oh, I think that varies from person to person. So.
What do you know about the tight end?
He's trying to get me early, ain't he?
He's great. He's great.
Yeah, well, some would say, but he's trying to.
What do the boosters know about football? No,
Exactly.
So what do you know about the tight end room that you're
That's
inheriting?
what I was going to ask you.
What I know about what?
The tight end room that you're inheriting. Also, you have experience obviously with quarterbacks. So what are your secondary question? What are your thoughts about Drake May?
Well, one of the things I've prided myself on is being versatile in all the different sort of positions that I've been fortunate enough to be able to coach. And I've coached some good players at those respective positions. It has nothing to do with me, but I've been fortunate enough to coach some of the best players that ever played the game at those specific positions. When you start talking about Adrian Peterson and Chris Johnson, you guys know Chris Johnson from went to East Carolina. So Carson Palmer and been around Kurt Warner. I didn't actually coach Kurt, but I've been around Kurt at Arizona. Tight ends, Jason Witten is one of the best to ever play the game. So I've been very fortunate. So what do I know about our guys here? I know that they're very versatile, each and every one of them in their own right. I know they're very intelligent, and I know they're very talented. I know they were very successful last year. I'd like to think we can get more out of them, okay? And they know that. And I'm here to, first of all, teach them. Secondly, get more out of them. So I think any position you start talking about, that's your goal every year, every day, every week, every practice, all those sort of things. You just kind of keep your head down, you start working, you find out, and you look at where you're at 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, and see how much better you've gotten.
And secondary part, what do you know about Drake, and what are your thoughts about him as a quarterback?
I've met him since we've been here. I think he's got a great skill set. I think he needs to continue to keep his head down and work. And, you know, here, like I love the question, how good do you think he can be? Okay? Like, that's probably going to be your next question. All right? So I would say this, who knows? How do you know? Because anything I tell you he can be, that's putting a cap on him, right? Okay, he can be a Hall of Famer. Well, how good of a Hall of Famer? You know, so anytime you give a projection, I don't like projecting on how good a guy can be. Because ultimately, I don't care how good I say he is or how good he can be, I'm putting a cap on him. So just keep your head down, keep working, and let's see where we're at week 2. And then hopefully we keep our head down and see where we're at week 4, and we're better than we were in week 2. And then in week 10, we're better than we were in week 2. So you just keep that thought process, keep that thinking, keep that work ethic, keep that mentality, and see where we're at. Because anything else is doing an injustice to us as coaches, him as a player, and us as a program.
So Freddie, you predicted Drake to be a Hall of Famer?
No, I did not.
In terms of tight ends, do you have, I don't know, is there a prototype tight end that you've worked with over the years? I don't know, Jason, you know, that when you're starting to teach your UNC guys, you would put up as like the model of who you would want them to embody, anything like that?
I think you always have a vision in your, in your brain of what you think it looks like. But I also don't think you can go with that with everybody, because you've got undersized guys that can do things that bigger sized guys can do. You've got, so do you have the perfect type player in your vision? Yeah, but nobody's perfect. So you've got to make sure that I think it all starts right here with the player, okay? And then they have to have the innate ability to block out distractions, especially in today's world, and just focus on what am I doing right now. I think that's a characteristic that everyone needs as a coach and a player. And I think you have to evaluate that at some point, because ultimately that's going to decide on how much they can progress.
What are a couple, obviously you coached at the highest level, you mentioned the great players you coached. What are things you can take from those guys, like 1 or 2 things maybe in their personality and their work ethic or whatever, and instill on the college level to make these North Carolina players better, that you've gotten from your experience in the NFL?
Right. I think, so you hit the nail on the head with one. You were making a comment, but you were asking a question from this standpoint. Everybody I've been very, very fortunate to coach some of these guys for one reason and one reason only. Every one of these guys I've learned something from, okay? I learned how a player can go work from Nick Chubb's one of the hardest working kids I've ever seen in my life, okay? It means something to him, things like that with Nick Chubb, okay? The ability to block out distractions for Carson Palmer was impeccable. So everybody I've ever coached, Adrian Peterson, I'll never forget, Adrian Peterson, we signed Adrian Peterson on a Tuesday. He flew back in. I actually flew to New Orleans to get him. Hopefully this was legal, but I flew to New Orleans, got him, picked him up, we're flying back because I'm teaching him the offense along the way, okay? We land Tuesday night, he goes to sleep, I go to sleep, whatever, we go walk through on Wednesday morning. And it's a walkthrough, okay? We hand him the ball off, okay? It's all semantics, it's just words. So he knows the play. They run it in New Orleans. We run the same play, we just call it something different in Arizona. So he knows the play, he's gone over it, he knows it. We hand him the ball off in a walkthrough. And if I tell you, like, he did not know what the definition of walkthrough would be. So, but that correlated to him on the game field, in games, and things like that during the course of the week. He didn't know but one speed. So that gave you a little insight of what type of player he was, okay? And what made him who he was. He was physically gifted and all that kind of stuff, but he, his work ethic and his mentality made him who he was. So in saying that, you've got to take each player individually, find out something's going to motivate them one way or the other. I think it's my job as a coach. Hopefully you get somebody that's self-motivated, but half of us aren't, so find something that motivates them, use that to benefit them, and hopefully they put the work effort in, and you get a player that you eventually want. And I don't think we have that problem with our guys at tight ends here. I think they work their tail off. They're going to give you everything they got, and it's now just cohesive and bring it together.
Freddie, what's your approach in terms of fitting in with the rest of the staff as being a newcomer, but having all of this experience? I mean, do you feel like you give them your full voice as you would in any other situation, or do you kind of search for your spot, so to speak?
I think, I think we're very fortunate here. I think we've got a lot of experience. So when I come into a place, I'm not that kind of guy, okay? Anybody that knows me knows that I'm not that kind of guy. So I want to learn from them just as much as anything that they can learn from me. So I'm not up there like the Godfather and trying to, run the show or anything. This is Chip Lindsey's offense. I'm going to do everything I can do to support Chip Lindsey, okay, in everything we do. This is Coach Brown's team. So Chip Lindsey and Freddie Kitchens and Randy Clements and Lonnie Galladay, all of us are doing everything we can to support Coach Brown and his vision and what he wants done in this program. And I think that's what your role is on the staff. Coach Stallings told me a long time ago, it was his job to make the president or the AD happy. It was the AD's job to make the president happy of the school. It was the coach's job to make him happy. And it was the player's job to make the coaches happy. So there's a hierarchy, and there's always a hierarchy. And I would never, ever do anything to impact that hierarchy, But in the same breath, you have to, in all directions, everybody has to be willing to learn. Everybody's got to be willing to communicate. Sometimes, some of the worst staffs I've ever been on just don't communicate, don't say anything. So that never can be the case because nobody's getting better in that sense. So, but I don't see this. I've been excited about coming to work and working with these guys, and it's been great. And it's going to continue to be great.
Freddie, do you have any recollection of playing against UNC were you a running quarterback?
That's funny you said that, right? You don't even know. So we did, like you guys talked about.
Open-ended for you.
I know, but it depends on who you ask, first of all. But I would say this, like as far as the Gator Bowl in '93, I do remember very vividly. That was my true freshman year. I played in 7 games as a true freshman, and it was a flip of the coin of who was going to start that Gator Bowl because our starting quarterback, Jay Barker, had gotten hurt. And it was a flip of the coin, and I lost the coin. Not a literal flip of the coin, but I lost the coin. I didn't start. Well, we went out. We had some success on offense, and defensively we were doing pretty good. And I never got in the game until, I think I got in the game late, handed off a few balls, and maybe took a knee at the end of the game or something. But I never really played much in that game. But I thought I was, and just like every other player at the time, right? I thought I should have been too. So, But I know we were worried to death going into that game about North Carolina's running game. You know, they had two great running backs. They had a quarterback that could move a little bit. So yeah, I do remember the game. Remember a lot of things about the game. But ultimately, I remember we won the game.
Johnson and Johnson.
Yeah, Johnson & Johnson. Exactly right. Yeah.
We good?
All right. Appreciate it.